Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss the government's latest announcement to make Brexit cost even more than it has already. So that's nice of them, isn't it? But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news in politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, Brexit just keeps getting more and more expensive, doesn't it? Not sure what happened to all that money we said we'd be saving. But Brexit has already cost our economy well over £100 billion before we'd even left the EU. And by the time we've left the transition period, it will have cost us, as a direct result of Brexit, nothing to do with the effects of COVID or just general government boobery, more than the UK has ever paid into the European coffers. And that's just down to businesses and investors not having confidence that we're going to get a deal with the EU. Wait until the rest of them see what the actual certainty is in 2021, because the Financial Times, I keep reminding people, which is the paper for financiers in this country, is constantly telling us that city investors are convinced that the government will agree terms with the EU. Convinced of it they are, basing all of their bets and forecasts on this belief. But in terms of direct costs to the taxpayers, it's already £7 billion for all the extra bureaucracy that's needed, because it turns out being in the EU was actually quite efficient. And leaving it means we need to hire more bureaucrats for one country than the entire EU employs to do the same jobs. They're also spending £705 million on border posts and bureaucrats again. And that's just the outlay so far. Further expansion, of course, will be needed, and those staff, I'm reliably informed, will want to be carried on paying wages into the future as well. Another cost that just didn't exist at all while we were members of the EU. But the latest financial announcement, this is for Northern Ireland, or businesses trading between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, is £355 million to ease that trade. Nowhere near enough, of course, but it is an indicator that even trading inside the UK is becoming more expensive because taxpayers' money is needed for it. Now, £200 million of that is to provide a free service to Northern Irish businesses to complete the digital trading processes. There needs to be a trading process now to move things from one part of a country to the same country. But anyway, there's that. Then the other £155 million is to develop an IT system to make the whole thing work. Now, in terms of the spending, what it gets us, so it's good that the government are acknowledging that Brexit is going to cost businesses a lot of money and that there's going to be loads of bureaucracy where it hadn't existed before. So the money is needed. Now, some of you may have seen the video I did earlier this week about the prohibitively expensive cost of shipping food goods from Britain to Northern Ireland, which has retailers saying that some supermarkets may have to pull out of Northern Ireland altogether. Now, I did see in the comments in that video some viewers suggesting various solutions to it. And don't worry, those solutions had occurred to me. But, if you say things like, oh, they'll just have to buy more stuff from the rest of Ireland or all the countries in the EU. Guys, this is retailers talking about this. This is the Northern Irish Retail Consortium. It's not Joe Public like you or I. There's no simple solution, otherwise they wouldn't be making a fuss. You or I can look at a situation and think, oh, we've got a solution. Like we could look at the situation, oh, it's going to be too expensive to ship goods from Britain, so we'll get them from the Republic of Ireland or we'll get them from France or somewhere like that. And we can easily miss something that actually makes it impossible. These guys are the experts. They know what they're talking about. And but anyway, never mind. The point is that very quickly, the money pledged here by the government doesn't cover that. Those extra expenses that I was talking about, I think it might have been yesterday, it was this week anyway, does not cover that at all. So those costs are still there. There's no mitigation of those costs at all with this announcement. Doesn't solve that problem in the slightest. In addition, when we look at this £200 million, I always say this, the government's solution to everything, if they say, oh, we're going to spend this much money, what's that money going to get you? Be very clear about that. So first of all, that £200 million is not to set up a system that then will work for the future. It's to cover some costs for a bit, time limited. I I mean, it might not even be time limited. It might be money limited. It might be once the £200 million is spent, that's it. I liken it to the money pledged by the government to farmers to replace EU subsidies. You know, at the moment, British farmers obviously are in receipt of EU subsidies. What's going to happen when we leave the EU? We're not going to get those subsidies. Government said, not worry, we'll cover you. Doesn't actually replace those EU subsidies, though, the money that the government have pledged, because it was a short-term pledge. The government are not keeping up with those payments. It was just for a little bit. So farmers will be losing those subsidies altogether over the next, it's been phased out over the next few years. By the time the next general election comes around, they're gone completely. Same applies here. It's a sticking plaster to try and portion out the damage of Brexit, because the most obvious way for people to see just how damaging Brexit is for everything to happen at once. Because this is the implication. If the government actually did nothing, if the government were true to their word from years ago that Brexit only brings upsides, there aren't really any downsides worth bothering about, they wouldn't actually have to do anything to prepare. Now, if they actually did nothing and we got to the 1st of January 2021 in World Trade Organization terms, the damage would be so obvious that there isn't a person in the country that could deny it. So what the government are seeking to do here, just like they're seeking to do in lots of other spending, is to defer some of the crap that's coming our way so it's less noticeable. They're not stopping the downsides happening. This money being spent is not there to make the problems go away. They're just trying to reduce how many problems happen at once, so we don't go into complete meltdown, or at least that's the plan. We still may. It doesn't hide the fact that British businesses in both Great Britain and Northern Ireland are going to have to carry out paperwork and pay fees to transport goods from Britain to Northern Ireland. You know, in other words, to transport goods from one part of the UK to another part of the UK. And even this £200 million doesn't cover all of their extra costs, even in the first few weeks or months or however long it will actually last. It just covers some of them. And just because the government have announced the money to do a thing as well, who's to say it will actually work? You know, consider government spending over the last few months. You know, they spent 12 million quid on a COVID tracing app. Did we get that tracing app on time? Was it delivered to schedule? No. Is it just going to be a bit delayed? No, we're never getting it. They've completely abandoned that project. If we ever get a tracing app, it will not be the one that the government have spent that 12 million quid on. We didn't get that at all. Now, there's another deadline to be met here, 31st of December 2020, because the very next day where we need that system up and running. And it's no good that system coming online at that date either, because businesses need time to be able to use it. They don't want to be hit with those costs immediately. The other, you know, we've also seen billions of pounds spent on PPE that couldn't be used because it's the wrong sort or just was simply defective. Again, money was pledged by the government, money was spent by the government, but we didn't get what the money paid for. So who's to say that just because the government say they're going to use £200 million to pay for this, that we're actually going to get this? It may not, this £200 million might not even, which is not even supposed to cover all of the extra costs, it may not even cover the extra costs that it is supposed to cover. Because here's where we come on to that other £155 million, which, like I said earlier, is to develop an IT system to help make all this work, to actually help the spending of that £200 million. Note what I've just said there. That's £155 million to develop an IT system to make it work. To develop. In other words, it doesn't exist yet. It hasn't been developed. Now, I am not an IT expert. Very, very far from it. Someone help me out here. How long does it take to develop a £155 million IT system? If an IT system is going to cost £155 million, how long would you expect that to take to develop? Because I'm going to guess more than a few weeks. But this system really needs to be in place in September. That's what you know, the government and themselves are sort of saying, you know, for these systems to be properly embedded for the 1st of January 2021, they need to be going online in September so that the industry, businesses can get themselves logged onto it. There's going to be registrations needed. You can't do that all in one day. The system will melt. You need businesses to be able to get registered, become familiar with it all. The whole thing needs to be up and running in September. 3 weeks to develop and implement a £155 million IT system. I'm not an expert. I'm going to guess, and it is a guess, that's probably not happening. And even if you say, well, as long as it's up by the 31st of December, I mean, I've already explained, hopefully, how that's not actually all that great. But okay, let's say, is even 4 months and a few weeks enough time to develop and implement a £155 million IT system? Because that sounds like it's a hefty system to me that would take quite a lot of time. I might even argue that such an outlay of cash to develop an IT system would probably take years, wouldn't it, to spend that much money on developing an IT system? So, yeah, this could actually end up being £355 million, which isn't just not enough, but doesn't actually deliver even what it's supposed to, and can be thrown on the big heap of our taxpayer money that the government will have effectively set fire to because we've got nothing for it. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you do, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I will see you later.